Hello, this is Dr. Rodi, and in this video I'm going to show how to use your TI84 calculator to find a critical value for a given confidence level. Now there's a lot of notation here which makes it seem a lot more complicated than it really is. But in essence what you're trying to do is find a percentile, which you did in the previous chapter. You found percentiles using the inverse normal function, and that's what we're going to use. The trick is just figuring out exactly what percentile it is that you want to find. Well, a critical value is the value in the standard normal distribution, the normal 0, 1, which will give you a certain percentage surrounding the center, in this case 0, the mean. So for instance, in this case, it wants us to find a critical value for a 95% confidence interval. So to find the critical value for a 95% confidence interval, we want to find the value right here, where my arrow is pointing, in the standard normal bell curve. In a 95% confidence interval, we'll have 95% of the probability of the normal curve between the two limits here. And remember, the normal curve is symmetric surrounding 0. This is 0, this point here. So right here, this green shaded part is 95%. Well, if you look into the tails, these red areas, that's what's left over if you take away 95%. Since it's symmetric, each one of these tails will have half of what's left over from 95%, or half of 5%, which is 2.5%, or as a decimal, 0.025. So if I'm looking at what percentile corresponds to this right here, the z alpha over 2, this critical value, well, that would be all of this area to the left of this tail right here. So from this hash mark where my arrow is, all the way to the left forever. Well, that's going to be the entire curve, which equals 1.0, 100%, minus the area here in this tail, 1 minus 0.025, which turns out to be 97.5. So what we're trying to do is find the 97.5 percentile. And this is how you can do it just with a little sketch on paper. You can kind of sketch it out and just figure it out. Now, if you like to do it by formula, you end up with a lot of notation that can look confusing and is probably more complicated than is needed. But if you like to use a formula, I'll go through that as well. But you can just visualize this picture and come up with the percentile that you need. In this case, the 97.5, and I'll do the TI calculation in a second. But alpha is what we call the significance level, and it's related to the confidence level in the sense that alpha is just 1 minus the confidence level. So what I can do is just take 100% minus my confidence level. So if I turn on my calculator here and do 1, well, you can do this in your head actually, but I can do 1 minus 0.95, but of course you can do this, you don't need a calculator for that, but you get 0.05. So my alpha is 0.05. Excuse me. My alpha is 0.05. So the percentile I'm looking for is 1 minus that 0.05 over 2. Well, the 0.05 over 2 equals, over here, the 0.025. So if I take 0.05 divided by 2, I get 0.025. That's the area to the right of this point. 95% is to, or 97.5% is all the way to the left. So if I want to figure out what percentile I need in order to do my critical value, I simply just take 1 minus 0.05 divide by 2. And you get the 0.975. Again, I think it's really easier to visualize it, so I suggest that you draw the sketch and just kind of visualize it and figure it out that way. It's a simple subtraction. Once you know this upper tail, you just do 1 minus that value. Okay, let's get to the calculation. I'll move my calculator right here. What we want to do is use inverse norm. This is a normal distribution with a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. So I want the point along this axis that will give me 97.5% to the left of it in the normal distribution with a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. Well, the way we do that is we use the inverse normal function. Hit second, go to above vars to distribution. You can arrow down to number 3 and hit enter, or you can type the number 3. It's your choice. You can arrow down, hit enter, or just type the number 3. It brings up inverse normal. The area I want, we're entered as a decimal, 0.975. Now, the mean is defaulted at 0 and 1. If you've been doing other problems, you might have different numbers in there. So make sure you put 0 and 1 on these particular problems, because the critical value is the value in the standard normal, which has a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. And then use the paste to calculate. So hit enter, and then hit enter again. So my critical value in this circumstance is, let's say we round to 2 decimals, will be 1.96, rounded to 2 decimals. And this is how you find the critical value for a given confidence level using the TI calculator.